Why did the United States invade Iraq in 2003?
The United States invaded Iraq on March 20, 2003. Historians have argued over what the main reasons were for this invasion, but essentially there were 5 factors that influenced the US's decision to invade Iraq. In no order of importance, these were Saddam Hussein and US intelligence on him, the attacks on the US by Al-Qaeda on September the 11th, large support from both parties in Congress, the vast amounts of oil in the Middle East and its effects there, and the belief that the US should aid in nation building for the Middle East. Perhaps the most thought of answer to the question of why the US invaded Iraq in 2003 is 9/11. While this certainly played a big part in the justification of the invasion of Iraq, that is mainly all it did, justify the attacks. Thoughts of invasions had already been circulating around DC at the time. 9/11 just gave further support to those thoughts. It showed that Iraq had state-sponsored terrorism, which was big in gaining the public support for the war. Not only was there now public support for the war, but Bush wanted to declare war now a little bit more, as because of the attacks, Bush now had a lower tolerance for risk. Hence, he passed the Patriot Act shortly after 9/11. This increased and broadened the powers of law enforcement agencies to bring terrorists to justice. As the attacks showed that Iraq had state-sponsored terrorism, it gave reason for the US military to have a presence in Iraq and the Middle East, which the public also saw fit. Which leads into a big reason for the invasion into Iraq. There was a large bipartisan support in Congress. By declaring war on Iraq, it would give the US a visible enemy which would allow them to show their strength. Many wanted this, as there was wide dissatisfaction with the containment policy, and they felt if the military flexed its muscles, that it would be more effective, specifically the strength of the military. With support from both parties, the Iraq resolution was able to be passed by Congress, giving President Bush the power to invade Iraq. Shared between both parties was the idea of nation building. Put simply, the US wanted to install democracy in Iraq, as they believed this would be best for Iraq and the world. The US has long believed this, following World War II with Germany and also with Vietnam when they faced communist leadership. Just like how the US went to war in Vietnam partially due to the domino theory, the domino theory played in effect with Iraq also. Although this time it was believed by Bush and others that if the US could successfully put in place a democratic government in Iraq, that the rest of the Middle East would follow, which would lead to stability in that part of the world. Oil was a large factor in the want for stability in the Middle East, as the US imported large amounts of oil from the Middle East and the US relied so heavily on oil for energy. They needed the country selling it to be stable. As Iraq was the main seller of oil, the US believed that if they were stable, they could become a model for change elsewhere in the Middle East. This was important to the US as they had a long-lasting commitment to bring stability to the entire Middle East. They felt that oil played a crucial part in doing this. In stabilizing the area, though, they needed to remove Saddam Hussein, president of Iraq. As oil was giving him continued power, he had influence over the entire region as viewed by the US. The United States also believed that Saddam was producing weapons of mass destruction that were prohibited by the UN. They feared that if Iraq got hold of nukes plus with the state-sponsored terrorism, they would become not only a national threat, but a global one too. Not only was he developing weapons of mass destruction, but he was also researching other weapons, like nerve gas. That was not the only reason the US wanted to remove him though. Relations with him and the US go far back and is considered to be unfinished business by some ranking government officials to remove him from power. Also, some hawkish personnel in Bush's administration believed this to be a necessary task to deter any attacks similar or inspired by 9/11. Not to mention that Bush believed that a regime change would be relatively easy and cost-effectively. In short, the answer has multiple intertwined aspects, with 9/11 being the deciding factor. The US wanted to bring stability to the region, but could not do that if Saddam stayed in power due to the vast amounts of oil Iraq had. With both sides of government wanting an invasion, it was an easy choice following 9/11 that the US had to make. They wanted to invade Iraq to end all the chaos in the Middle East, all the while showing the strength of the United States.